Hey B, welcome to episode 24 or season 2, episode 4 of I Was a Teenage Fundamentalist. How's your week been?
Yeah, pretty good. Always lots on. I have a busy life. I think I've spoken about this before. There's always something on most days, and most evenings and weekends are always jam-packed. So it's been nuts. How about yours? How was your week?
Yeah, it was good. It was good. I've been working like you, and family, and doing all the things that we normally do. I've been doing a little bit of behind the scenes work around the podcast. I have to say that I'm enjoying the creative outlet of doing this. The creativity and getting to express that through technology, like the editing and all that. And it's been fun. I'm really enjoying myself with this.
That's really cool. And you are certainly the king of that. You do that stuff really well. So hats off to you. The editing that people hear on the finished product, that's tea.
Hopefully it's the editing they don't hear on the finished product is a better
Yes.
way to put it. Yeah, indeed. I just want to remind people that it would be really helpful for us if you would rate and review the podcast. So if you're on Apple Podcasts or whatever platform, if there's an ability to rate it and review it, please do, because it just bumps us up and we get a greater audience that way as it gets bumped up the charts.
That is handy. And also our socials, Facebook, Twitter. We're not on Instagram yet. We haven't gone there, but you never know. We may go there. But Facebook and Twitter, the Facebook group, always good interactions. People are really enjoying that. I think that we've watched that grow and we've loved watching it grow. Get in there, interact, invite people to come in and be part of the conversation if you think that they would be interested, and invite them to the podcast.
Yeah, for sure. Welcome along. So our topic today, B, is healing and miracles, or miracles and healing, whichever order we want to get into. What do you have to say about that? Let's start with you, brother. Yeah, praise the Lord. Praise the Lord.
Yeah, look, healings and miracles were a funny thing, because this was something that it was always advertised, wasn't it? That healings and miracles, and quite often in a lot of Penty churches, you would see they'd have healings and miracle meetings, and we would certainly at Great Big AAG have healings and miracle nights, and a lot of froth and bubble around it. But for me, did I ever experience healing and a miracle? I don't know. Life's a miracle. There's no doubt about that. Life's an amazing miracle. But did I see any of those high-profile miracles? Don't know. Not sure I did. How about you?
Healings? Did you see any healings?
I don't know. I mean, look, I want to believe that I did. But one thing that I remember comes to mind was my ex-wife's auntie. Her husband had died, so my ex-wife's uncle. It left her auntie, widowed in probably her late 50s, incredibly lonely. She just really wanted to be with him, and she went to the doctor one day. The doctor said, "Your lungs are full of cancer, absolutely rife," and showed her the scans. Obviously, this happened over a few visits, and she asked for the prognosis, and they said, "Well, not good. It's in your lungs. There's a lot of it." Anyway, long story short, she went back for treatment a couple of weeks later, and there were no spots on her lungs. There was nothing. And this is obviously according to her. I never saw any of the scans, never saw any of that. They weren't a stark, raving, mad Pentecostal family at all. They were actually quite a conservative family. I guess that was the closest one that I can remember that I was involved with or privy to some of that information. How about you?
The Revival Centre was all about healing. It was one of their big things, right? They were stuck in the Pentecostal 50s and 1950s. For them, healing was a big part of their message. It was a big part of what they claimed separated them from all the different churches, Catholic and Anglican and this kind of thing. We were told very early that God heals. And you remember my story, right? Episode 2, where I talked about getting converted. And it was on that camp where I told one of the pastors, or one of the leaders, actually, he wasn't a pastor, that I was getting a headache. And he said, "No, we're not tolerating this. We're going to pray. We're going to pray for your headache, And so we went into the cabin, me and a few other guys and him, and we all got our heads down, as you do, and on your knees, and we started speaking in tongues. And he said, "We're going to get rid of that headache." All right. Yeah. And my headache passed. You look at that and you go, well, so what? It was just a fucking headache. But I suffered from severe migraines. Yeah. Severe migraines, to the point where if I felt a migraine coming on, That was the end of my day. And I was just a kid, just a little boy. And I would get trembly. I would get sick in the stomach. The headache would come on and the migraine would hit me so hard that I could not move. And
Mm.
my mother would give me a couple of aspirin. Wasn't paracetamol. It wasn't anything else. It was the aspirin that I had to have. And I would take the aspirin. I would fall asleep. And
Yep.
then I would wake up and it would be gone. And that was
Okay.
something that was quite severe for me, to the point where I was seeing neurosurgeons or neurospecialists and having brain scans and all kinds of things going on. Why is this kid getting these migraines? We know about migraines is that we don't know much about migraines, right? What causes
Yep.
them, why they come on, etc. As much as I don't want to say this, when we got down that day and prayed, I never had a migraine again.
Wow.
Right? From that day forward, and I felt it coming on. We got down, we prayed in tongues, yada, yada. Excuse the pun. Next thing you know, the headache had receded and I never had another one again until I was in my 40s and I
Yeah.
had a couple of blind migraines. And it was a different experience. I had sort of the tunnel vision. It was, peripheral vision sort of vanished. I started seeing electricity, like lines of electricity in my eyesight. And then I would be sort of overcome with tiredness and want to sleep. But I could continue working if I, sort of pushed myself. And that happened a few times in my 40s. But besides that, I never had a migraine again. Now, does that mean I was healed? I don't know, because when you have juvenile migraines, you can grow out of them. But I
Yep.
wasn't hitting puberty or anything like that. But
Okay.
definitely, we got down, we prayed in tongues, and I never had a migraine again.
Well, I guess we can put it to the miracle and healing or the unknown. I don't know. It's a choice which one you accept. I don't know. I can't remember actually ever being prayed for a healing of anything personally. I mean, there was certainly when I'd gone through some rough patches in life, and certainly my mental health was knocked around, that I got prayer from people to be able to find comfort and peace and all that sort of stuff. And quite often I found comfort and peace within it. Was it God? Was it a miracle? Was it a healing? I don't know. But I did find peace within that. And maybe it was knowing that I had the support, knowing that I had people around me. I remember a good friend of mine is a minister. Actually, haven't seen him for about 3 years, but up until then, he was a minister. And very young, at about 37, 35 even, he got diagnosed with stage 4 bowel cancer. Had no signs, nothing whatsoever. His wife came to him and said, I really think you should go have a full health check, including a colonoscopy, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, he did. And he was found to have stage 4 bowel cancer. The prognosis wasn't fantastic. It was like a 10% chance of survival post 5 years. I know he's still alive today. I know that for a fact. And that was maybe 10, 12 years ago now, maybe even longer. Yeah, round about then. But I remember him at the time, I was sort of exiting the church, and I said to him, oh, do you want us to pray for you? He goes, no. He goes, actually, I don't believe that in God's eyes I am important enough for him to prioritize my lowly needs of healing from sickness. I'll trust science. And for me, even back then, it was a bit confronting. I was like, wow, you're actually saying that you'll leave it in the hands of science and not even try God for a miracle. But hey, he's still alive. And I think personally I see medical intervention as pretty bloody miraculous, particularly how far it's come these days.
Yeah, sure. Both those stories were, people who had cancer and people who got over cancer. And people do. That does happen.
That's right.
But we both know people in our lives where they've got cancer and they haven't got over it. And so there's a percentage of people that live and there's a percentage of people that die. And so in terms of healings, in terms of miracles, just because someone gets over something doesn't mean it's a miracle, right?
No.
And oftentimes you will hear those stories of, oh, this person, prayed for me and then I started to get better and then it came back. And then, and they talk about as if God was healing them just a little bit. Oh, I'll just give you a little bit of healing. And to me, that doesn't quite line up with the claims of Christianity. Like the claims of Christianity and even, the Old Testament or Judaism, is that when a miracle happens, it's a fucking miracle. There's no explaining it. And, you know, you hear the saying that fantastic claims require fantastic evidence. And so if we're going to say this was a miracle, then we really need, show me the evidence that this is a miracle. Otherwise, it's not. But that doesn't mean that it's not a good thing.
So on that, have you ever seen evidence of a miracle? Whether it's seeing it, and we're talking one of these big miracles, like someone who hasn't walked in a long time walking, someone who, you know, grows an arm back that was had an arm amputated. Have you seen that firsthand, or have you seen verified footage of it?
I'm going to answer that with a story.
Okay. Story time with Uncle T.
Yeah, story time with Uncle T. At Great Big AOG once, there was a famous American evangelist, pastor, whatever he was. I think he was an evangelist, and his name was Don Gossett. And Don Gossett was, do you remember him? And Don Gossett was a faith teacher as well. He was a bit of a prosperity guy, and he was all about healing. He was sort of cut from the same block as Kenneth Hagin rather than Kenneth Copeland, right? So he was very much, you know, classical Pentecostal, and I think that's why Great Big AOG had him. So he came along for a healing crusade, and it went for a couple of nights, and it was in the middle of the week. I remember going along, and the thing that struck me first was all the lights were dim.
Yeah.
The whole place, you know, it wasn't like because you remember we'd go to meetings at Great Big AOG, and it was very light, and the carpet was pink, and the walls were white, and it was very light and fluffy and friendly. But we went in for this, and for some reason, no, he wanted all the lights really, really dim. And so couldn't see really well. But I can remember that he was calling people up to come and, you know, ask for healing. And so it was like he had a prayer line, except he would bring them right up onto the stage and he would talk to them and ask them, you know, and then he'd pray and he'd do the whole, you know, pushing them over or slain in the spirit, whichever way you want to look at it, it was actually happening. But there was one woman that came up to him. And I remember looking at him, and I remember turning to the person next to me and said, she's going to get healed.
Yeah.
Right? And we hadn't seen any healings up to that point. And I turned to the person next to me and said, she's about to get healed. So she came up, and he's American, right? And he's like, you know, because people have been talking, have been handing out the microphone to them, and you know, and this woman said, he said, what did you say? You don't want to speak? You don't want to talk? Okay. And so she would whisper in his ear, and then he would say, her problem was a hearing problem. I don't know if she was completely deaf or partially deaf, and maybe that was why she, you know, I'm doing the air quotes here, didn't want to speak. He prayed for her, and then I think it was, you know, typical sort of, you know, fingers in the ears and loosen now, you know, and all this. And then she claimed to have been healed. She was saying that she could hear, and she was, you know, walking along the stage. She's going, can you hear me now? And she's waving, can you hear me now? You know, and all this. But she didn't say a word the whole time. And it wasn't until years later that I stopped and went, probably because she had a fucking American accent. Yes. She couldn't do the Australian accent, right? She couldn't get up there and start talking because people would go, wow, she sounds just like him.
That's interesting.
Right? And that used to be my story of, have you ever seen a healing? Yes, I have. There was this time where Don Gossett came and this woman was healed, and I turned to my friend and said, she's about to be healed. And years later I stopped and realized, nah, you didn't see shit.
Yeah.
Like really, when I stop and think about what did I see, I saw a man and a woman on stage telling me this is what's happened. Didn't see a single thing myself. And it was in that realization, in my angry atheist stage, in that realization that I actually stopped and thought, did you ever see a healing the whole time you were in church? And this is why I, you know, said to you, I'm going to tell you this story before I answer the question. And the answer is B, no, not once, not one single fucking miracle, and not one single fucking healing, nothing that could be shown to be demonstratively a healing or a miracle. Lots of coincidences, lots of people coming up and giving me money when I needed money, things like that, 100%. But did I see limbs grow back? No. Did I see people jumping out of wheelchairs? No, not a thing.
Yeah, no, either do I. And I mean, you see these Benny Hinn videos where he's shooting off his Holy Ghost machine gun and all that sort of stuff, and he's healing people left, right, and centre. But it's showmanship, and I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced any of that is real. I remember at Bible college, one of the lecturers saying that the reason we didn't see many miracles in Australia, particularly medical miracles, is because we had the Medicare system. We had a system where science and doctors were allowed to intervene, and they stopped the power of God in people's lives. What a load of rubbish. And even back then, I remember saying to him that I just think that's a load of rubbish, but he stuck to that, and he believed that we were hindering God by allowing doctors to actually heal people. Interesting one, that's for sure.
There's a website called whywon'tgodhealamputees.com. Why won't God heal amputees.com? And basically they lay the claim or the challenge out there. Okay, so this is one that we can demonstrate, right? You know, I don't know if you ever remember Spider-Man, but there was Dr. Connors, right, who basically took some lizard DNA so he could grow his limbs back, right? He was cool. There's no evidence of anybody having limbs grow back. Now, you will hear stories. You will hear people say, no, that's not true. There was a friend of a friend, but there's nothing out there, right, about God healing amputees. Now, some of the stories that you and I have told, like the migraine, or people seeing cancer cured and everything, or even you were talking about some of your moods and your mental or emotional well-being. It's all psychological, right? And it can all be explained psychologically. But these things,
I remember, and I'm sure that many of the listeners maybe experienced this too. Late 80s, early 90s, there seemed to be a bit of a craze on leg lengthening and arm lengthening.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Do you remember this? And I remember we had, I think we like to refer to it as a bit of a mini revival. This would have been actually very early 90s. It was before I came to Great Big AOG. Little mini revival where we would have services that would go for hours and hours. And every time it would end with one of the pastors getting people laying on the floor and going, look, yep, their right leg's an inch shorter than the left one. And they'd pray, they'd pull and poke and prod the legs. They'd get up, they'd say to the person, stand. They'd size them up and go, look, they're both the same length. And this person, their legs were always the same length. I never saw them hopping around or hobbling around. And this happened, I reckon, to dozens of people. It was over and over. It was quite hilarious to watch.
Did anybody ever point out that some of the women in the auditorium, their boobs were slightly different sizes, or that their boobs were hanging lower or higher than the other one? Because from what I understand, that's true of all women.
Yes.
Right? That most women have one that's bigger than the other or lower than the other. Did the pastor ever lay hands and see them healed?
No, surprisingly, even in that misogynist type environment, no, they didn't. Maybe there's a market there.
There was one doctrine that went around, and that was that Jesus had died for our sins as much as he had died for our sicknesses. And so that was based on Isaiah 53, 4-5, where it says, by his stripes we're healed. And they claim that section in Isaiah is talking about Jesus, which it may or may not be. And then there's also Psalm 103, where it says, that God heals all your diseases. And so they take those as promises, right? That Jesus died, and so you can claim your healing as much as you claim your salvation. Now, the thing about that is if it's put out there that, yes, this is your right, then what happens when it doesn't happen? What happens to those people? Like, do they look at it and go, oh, and we were taught that in Bible college. That was an official line in Bible college, that Jesus died for our sins as much as our sicknesses. But what does that say to people when they don't get healed? It says you don't have enough faith. And someone challenged me about that and said, if you don't have enough faith to be healed because, Jesus did it at the cross, maybe you don't have enough faith to be saved. Yeah, and so if you die from that sickness,
you're going to hell.
Yeah, too bad for you.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and it's always placed back onto the person. It could never be that the God that has been presented as fallible, of course, because that would undermine every part of their theology and their belief. Put it on, and how does that make people feel? It makes them feel inadequate. I certainly have had people close to me that have spent so many hours daily in prayer to build their faith, like they're working at it so they can exercise it better. And again, it's all about them.
Mm. What about some of those smaller miracles, right? So I'm not claiming that these are legitimately miracles, but we used to claim they were. Like once, for example, when I was at Bible college, I didn't have a lot of money, and my then girlfriend was oftentimes buying me stuff, food and things like that. And one day she came to me and she said, "I'm not going to buy you lunch today. You need to have faith," because I think she thought I was mooching off her, and I possibly was. But she's like, "I'm not, you have to have faith." And this is back in the days when McDonald's had those medium meal deals for $5, right? So you got a quarter pounder, a medium fries, and a medium Coke for $5. So anyway, we're in the service, right? Because this is talking about afterwards for lunch. And so I was praying. And I said, "God, I really want $5. And at the end of the service, a mutual friend of ours comes up and says, "God told me to give you this," and gives me $5 for my meal. And I mean, that's very similar to your story about, not having enough money to get on the train. And, the minister said, "Here's the money." Mind you, he took it back, so it wasn't much of a miracle. But I got that $5.
Yeah.
Right? Explain that.
Yeah, and is that a miracle? Is it a healing? Or is it provision? I don't know. Is it coincidence? Because
Jehovah
how many
Jireh, brother. Jehovah Jireh, my provider.
My provider.
Remember that chorus?
Yes,
Jehovah Jireh, my provider. Yeah. I've got to sing it with a really thick Aussie accent.
Yeah, you do.
Jehovah Jireh, my provider.
That's really taking me back, and now I'm going to go to sleep singing that tonight. I can see it. But yeah,
let's do it as an earworm in people's ears.
Yeah. Well,
after dear listener, His grace is sufficient for me.
Well, that's after we've just done a McDonald's product placement in the podcast, of course.
Yeah,
McDonald's, we are open to sponsorship.
And my story shares that McDonald's is a gift of God.
Yes, it
quarter pounder
is.
With cheese, dude. Quarter pounder. Have you noticed you go into McDonald's, if you say quarter pounder with cheese, they look at you funny, like you want extra cheese? Because there's no such thing as a quarter pounder anymore. It's a quarter pounder automatically comes with cheese.
That's right. Yeah, I don't know why it never, like you had to ask for cheese. It was just so dumb. But personally, I like a double quarter pounder. That is my favourite. Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'll just let you in a little secret. That's why you're fat. But go on. Keep telling the story. Yeah, no
appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. It's my years in Asia. You can tell people they're fat in Asia.
Yes, every time I do go to Asia, I do walk into a shop and they go, "Sorry, we don't have your size." Before I even ask, "Sorry, we don't have your size." You gotta love it. It's just like, hey, I'm just a large in Australia, but that apparently is like a quadruple XL over there.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, gotta love it. But thanks. I'll just dwell on my fatness. Thank you for that.
So, do you have any of those little miracles?
Oh, look, I possibly did. None really come to mind. There was lots of ones. Like I think I did share it in the mission and evangelism episode where I went and spoke to a regional church and talked to them about my up and coming overseas trip, and they gave a love offering at the end of it of hundreds of dollars and I didn't have the money to pay for the flights by then.
But that's not a miracle. You went there and told them that you're going away on this missions trip and you need money, and they gave you money.
No, I didn't tell them I needed money.
Oh, didn't
you? No, not at all.
But you did go there as the speaker, right? And that you said, in the other episode, people take offerings when you speak. Absolutely. That's what they do. I'll call you on that one. That's not a miracle.
I'll call you on your fucking $5.
No, my $5 wasn't true. That was a gift of God. Quarter pounder with cheese.
Come on, McDonald's. Roll up sponsorship.
We promise that this podcast will remain free, right? We didn't say it'd be free of ads.
That's right. And look, I'll keep it a complete secret that I prefer Hungry Jack's, which is Burger King for those Americans listening. Yeah, I don't know. Now I'm just thinking of food, so I'm quite distracted. I can't really think. There was lots of little bits and pieces that I put down to coincidence, and I'm not quite sure that I ever experienced a true miracle. I remember at one stage praying that I'd win a raffle of a house, all those sort of things. That never happened. Why didn't I get that?
In the faith movement episode, remember I talked about laying hands on the Mercedes
Yeah, that's right.
and didn't buy a ticket in the raffle. I didn't win.
That's true faith, though, not buying a ticket.
You're not buying a ticket in the raffle. Yeah, but I did have McDonald's. I did. I had a quarter pounder with cheese, medium Coke, medium fries. Yeah, and that was a gift of God. Do you get it? Like, this is the thing about it all. We look at it now and we laugh, but at the time, it was fucking move of the Holy Spirit. That someone gave me $5.
Yeah, and look, I think I'd like to challenge people that are in the Facebook group. Have you seen a real miracle, or do you believe you've seen a real miracle? Tell us about it, but don't just tell us about it. We don't want hearsay. We want evidence.
Yeah, and it has to be you saw it,
yes.
And it has to be, and you have to tell us how you verified it. Now, I'm also aware that some of these spiritual experiences, some of these mystical experiences that people have that we could call a miracle, they can be just personal and it's impossible to prove. I get that. In fact, I've had these, but I've had those outside of Christianity, right? I've had these experiences where I just can't explain them and, they're spooky. But please put it in the chat, put it in the Facebook group, because I'd really like to hear if you've seen a miracle or if you've seen a healing or got a healing yourself that can be verified. It wasn't just, it's like Chinese medicine, right? I lived in China for a long time and people say, the Chinese would say, Chinese medicine doesn't work as fast as American medicine. And I'd be like, yeah, it takes pretty much as long as it would take to get over it naturally by not taking anything. For a lot of that Chinese medicine, man, seriously, it's not scientific. Not all of it. Don't say horrible things about me in the Facebook group, but it's true. And it's the same kind of thing with that. Right. Yeah. People say, look, I stayed home for a week and got over the flu, great. Or other people say, I stayed home for a week and God healed me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And look, for me, I'm not closed to it. I'm very open to it. If people can demonstrate it and offer some evidence and proof, then, I'm up for it. I mean, I've certainly, like you, T, experienced some mystical, spiritual experiences outside of the church. And for me, they're very real. There's absolutely no mistaking it. Whether that is God or I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I've definitely experienced things. So please don't think that I'm putting that challenge out there going, it's all a crock of shit and no one can prove it.
Yeah, same. I'm certainly not saying it doesn't happen, but I am saying it's not just the domain of Christianity or not just the domain of Pentecostalism. But I think what separates Pentecostalism from some of these other Christian denominations is we made such a big noise about it and so many fantastic claims around it. And as I said, fantastic claims require fantastic evidence. So I can believe that people are healed for unexplainable reasons, right? That we can't say why it's happened. But does that necessarily prove that, Jesus rose from the dead and, if you ask him into your heart and no, it doesn't. But it doesn't disprove it either.
No, that's right. And I mean, you're right, it is central. I mean, you look at all those. There's a church around the corner from me, a couple of kilometres away, that quite often puts up a tent. Like they have a building there. They have a fully functional, very large building, but quite often they put up a tent and have tent revival. I don't know why. A tent's more spiritual. I don't know, but they have
it's because that's the way it was done. Once upon a time, they couldn't afford buildings, and so they would actually have these tents, and your Oral Roberts and your William Branham and all these guys would actually go around in tents. So it's just a tradition.
But they have bloody buildings on this site, and they have to, they put a tent up beside the building. It's just quite bizarre. But they have banners out there, miracles and healing, X date to X date. So not only that, they're really locking God into some specific dates for those miracles.
Yeah, for sure. I can remember there was a church that was in a suburb that had a lot of Muslims here in our city, and they actually were putting up signs saying, crusades, Christian crusades and this kind of thing. And I can remember a friend of mine saying, I don't think the Muslims are going to take that too well if they hear the Christians are going to start another crusade.
Of course. I can imagine. But yes, so in short, have I seen or experienced a miracle? Yeah, I don't think I have.
No, me either. So I think we'll just end that one there. The answer is no.
No, not at all. So we are loving the fact that this season we do have a lot of guests lined up. So it's good to hear other people's stories and other experiences. So we're loving that. I hope you're loving it because there's plenty more to come.
Yeah, cool. Do you want to cue the music, B? You cue the music?
Cue the music.
Yeah. All right. So we'll see you next week. We look forward to you jumping in. Don't forget to rate us and review us and jump into Facebook if that's what you want to do.
That's it. And share with your friends. See you later.